America, what sports do you really think of? You think of baseball, football, maybe hockey. Today I'm going to talk about football. I'm going to talk to you about the evolution of the NFL. First I'm going to talk about how it was started. I'm going to talk to you about the introduction of the AFL, and then I'm also going to talk to you about the equipment, how that changed over the years. The NFL was technically started in 1920. It started off as the APFA, which was the American Professional Football Association. Then in 1922, they changed the name officially to the NFL. The NFL consisted of 14 teams. Those teams were based in the West. You had teams in Illinois, you had teams in Ohio. Only two of those 14 teams still exist today. Those would be the Chicago Bears and the Arizona Cardinals. Then when the championship would be won, you wouldn't win the Lombardi Trophy like you would today. You would end up winning something called the Brunswick Bowl Colander Cup, which was stolen many times because teams would win it, just not want to give it up for some reason. Because there really was no rules with the Lombardi Trophy is today, where like everybody can like have it for a certain period of time, then they give it back to the team owners. Then in 1968, they stopped going from, which was basically just the championship, they changed the name to the Super Bowl, which some of you might know is played by the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Packers ended up winning the first Super Bowl, which was then named the Lombardi Trophy, which was named after Coach Lombardi, who was the coach of the Green Bay Packers at that time and was considered, and is still considered, the greatest football coach of all time. That was the base of how it was really started. Next I'm going to talk about the introduction of the AFC. The AFC came into the league late, like in the 50s. They brought in certain teams such as the New York Titans, which would change their names to the New York Jets, the Oakland Raiders, and the then Houston Chiefs would change their name to the Kansas City Chiefs. They were thought to be not as good as the NFL. Really, they thought were just random teams that wanted to be as good as everybody else, up until 1972 when they won Super Bowl IV against the Minnesota Vikings. And the reason why actually the Chiefs got their name was when they transferred over from Houston to Kansas City. The mayor's name was, or his nickname was the Chief, so I wanted to name it after the mayor of Kansas City. Next I'm going to talk about is the equipment. The equipment really just, the shoulder pads and like the pads, everything in the legs were just like the same as they were today. They're just foam pads, and the shoulder pads were always kind of bulky. But the helmet was a major thing that really changed over the years. Initially, when football first started, nobody wore helmets at all, which caused a lot of head injury. There was actually a player who, a doctor told him that if he were to take another hard head injury, he wouldn't be able to play football ever again. So what he did was, he went to a shoemaker, and he made him a helmet out of full-on leather, which was really light and protected his head a little bit, really didn't do much. And then you got into more complex in the 40s, which was what we see and call now as the leatherheads, which is the kind of helmet they used in the 40s. And then a few years later, like towards the mid-50s is when we started to get the really crappy plastic helmets, which didn't have face masks that we have today. The first one intended to have a face mask was Otto Graham, because he got hit in the face and had like, stitches in his face. So what they did was they got a really thin piece of clear plastic and put it across, and that was technically the first face mask at the time. And it evolved from just going from that, because with it being like frigid temperatures, where certain teams were positioned at, whenever you get a nice hit to the face or anything, the plastic would end up shattering, and it's no good if plastic shatters around your face at all. So then they went to the face mask that we kind of think of today, which is a really thin bar of plastic, of a mixture of plastic and rubber, which then was either just 1 or 2 bars across the face, and then it evolved to, in the 70s and 80s, which is the full-on face mask with being really complex with chin straps and everything like we see today. And now today, the whole problem with the helmets and everything is getting concussions and CTE and other concussion-related injuries and diseases. So we have different companies now who are trying to make helmets safer for players, so you don't get as many concussions during games, you don't end up getting CTE later in life, which is just no good to have in general. And too many concussions is, even one concussion sometimes is not good at all. So we have companies now who are putting more stuff inside the helmet between the plastic barrier and the inside where you put your head, where that layer is. So when you go in, we're not really supposed to, but if you like leave with your head and like get hit in the head or something, the plastic kind of compresses down and it kind of gets stopped with shock absorbers inside the helmet, which really limits the amount of pressure that goes to your brain and like your head and your skull and everything. So that's really it for the equipment. What I talked to you about today was the whole evolution of the NFL, how it was started, how it became what it is today with the teams, with the introduction of the AFC, which is a no-good team, and then became part of the NFL later. And now we have the NFL and all the modern equipment we have today.